That's the way to start a video. What is software? And we went straight over a wave. So for context, we're only doing about 13 knots in the middle of the Solent, but I am going right across the shipping channel, so it's getting a bit more wavy, which is a bit of a shame. Anyway, what is software? So software is a complex area, and there are specialist software buyers in the procurement world that understand a lot of nuances about how software works. But if you're looking to get into this field, again, worth understanding the basics. Software is code that sits on a piece of hardware to do something, and usually it's something that involves calculating maths or doing certain graphical functions, and there's a whole raft of different bits of software you need to consider. But there's sort of three main layers of the way my head works. It's on a stack. So at the bottom of the stack you have what generally is known as either firmware or operating system software, and most of you will know this because you have Windows on your PCs. That is an operating system, and what that does is it helps the computer know what to do in certain situations. So it's a piece of software, in this case written by Microsoft, and all that piece of software is doing is explaining to the computer, you need to show this on the screen, you need to switch the fan on, you need to do this, that and the other to drive, make the computer useful. And if you think about it as a stack, that's at the bottom of the stack because it effectively sits between everything else and the hardware. And so if something goes wrong with the operating system, you're in a bit of trouble because it's what's controlling the computer. And on that basis, it's really important that you keep your operating system up to date and you make sure the software that you buy is going to be current for a long period of time. There's lots of different types of operating system, and it's largely dependent on the hardware that is being used. Most people know Windows, but there's also things like Linux, there's AIX, there's all sorts of operating systems based on the computers that they're being used on. And they all have different functions, which I don't have time to cover now. But it's really important to make sure that you understand that operating systems are really the most basic of all things, the foundation of all software. The next layer up is what I would term a database. So what this generally is used for is storing data. And so if you think about Excel, which most people know as a spreadsheet, that is not a database, but it's like a database. It shows you a table of information that will list numbers or give you a list of sort of information that you can then filter and choose from. Now, a database itself, again, is fairly basic, although there are some advanced ones, which I won't go into. And that sort of database's purpose is just to serve information to an application, which is the next layer up. The reason why I'm referencing databases specifically, it's not the sort of thing you'll use on your own, but there are a number of big database providers in the market that have got quite strong market presence. So these are people like Oracle, Microsoft have got something called SQL or SQL Server. And so those databases are really important. And again, you need to license them so they can get expensive. And they also need to work on the operating system you've got and with the application you've got. So if you start thinking about the layers, you've got an operating system, you've defined it. It's going to be, in this case, Windows. It's going to be quite difficult to find a database that will run on anything but Windows. So you need to make sure you pick the right software to run on the right operating system. And then at the top of the stack, you've got what I refer to as application software or applications, and they're really there to do the interesting stuff, the business process stuff. So Microsoft Excel is an application. SAP, for those of you who use it, is an application. And what they're there to do is effectively deliver a business process. So again, think of it as a stack. You've got an application at the top, like SAP or Microsoft Outlook, another good example. Its purpose is to deliver email to a user. Underneath Microsoft Outlook, you've got a database, which is all your emails and some other bits like your contacts and your calendar. And that all sits on Windows. So the reason why I'm explaining it in these noddy terms is people think buying a piece of software is really easy, but you've got to consider the layers of those three layers in my simple model because they all work together. And if you buy one piece of software, it can have an impact on all of the other bits of software. Or if one bit of software breaks, it'll potentially break everything else. So buying software is actually a more technical discipline than some of the other bits of IT. The commercial implications are a bit different to hardware. You generally don't need to ship it anymore. It used to be times when you would buy a software license and they would ship you a CD, and that's all a bit old school. Now you generally download it from the internet and you get a license key. So software doesn't have the logistical complexity of hardware. But what it does have is a lot of complicated licensing terms. And so these are the contractual terms that a software provider will put in place to protect its intellectual property, its software, from being misused. And these are really complicated and definitely worth engaging with specialists or going on specialist courses to understand how these things work. But some examples would be, if you buy a Microsoft license for use in the UK, you can't really use it internationally, or there are limitations to where you can use it. If you buy a license that is for a particular number of users, and you buy, and a load more users use it, you're breaking that license agreement and there will be costs associated with it. So software licensing, if you get it wrong, can be really, really costly and really complicated, and you want to avoid that at all costs. So from a procurement perspective, software licenses, two factors really. One is you need to read the terms and conditions. It's very important. And the second thing is you need to make sure it's compatible with the other layers of the software stack.